And well, the same way it always goes. These very same mainstream media outlets who call us crazy conspiracy theorists and dangerous and must be removed for reporting that there are directed energy weapons. Now they, always way behind on the news, are reporting the directed energy weapons that are now public knowledge because the Navy has admitted it. I mean, don't get me wrong, the mainstream has been touching on this off and on for many years, and the Navy has made statements before this and given demonstrations of these technologies, but they haven't been talking about the limitless reports of this technology from everyday citizens all around the world. They only cover the military industrial complex like press releases. So once again, us lowly serfs, we have been vindicated. And yes, the U.S. Navy admits that they have directed energy weapons. It's May 23rd of 2020, and this is 10 hours ago. The U.S. successfully tested a laser weapon that can destroy aircraft mid-flight. The Navy's Pacific Fleet said in a statement Friday. So it's not conspiracy theory anymore. The Navy themselves have admitted that they have these directed energy weapons. The Navy says lasers, which it calls directed energy weapons, DEW, can be effective defense against drones and armed small boats. So this is precisely what we saw during the wildfires when we've been talking over these years that we are already at war. We have been at war a long time. It's just a different kind of war. It's very high tech and it's technology that they haven't released to the masses. So when we talk about weather wars and these directed energy weapons, now we are vindicated again like we always are. This happens one by one by one. Of course, nobody's ever going to come back and apologize to us and say, oh gosh, you guys were on the cutting edge, the pioneering front. You were the wisest scholars when all of the other scholars were scoffing and mocking. You guys knew about all of this technology. You were ahead of the game. No, they'll just leave it at, well, your channel's already gone. You've already been banned and silenced and ridiculed and mocked, and lots of people have lost their jobs and all sorts of stuff. They'll just leave it at that. But now we're telling you that, yes, of course, this is a weapon that the United States military has, directed energy weapons. So there you have it, folks. I don't know if we'll all live long enough for them to make the confession about the nanotechnologies and the other super advanced things that are being used in this war on humanity. But I just wanted to throw this in because you are not crazy and I am not crazy. So keep the faith, you guys. I know it's a lonely road when you're out in front of the pack instead of right in the middle of the pack, just milling along with everybody else. That out here in front, when you say these things, you don't get a Nobel Peace Prize. You don't get a giant grant from the government. You don't get a job at CNN making big bucks. You don't get anything except heartache and trouble. But I want you to know that you are on the right track and that you are wide awake and these things do exist and the masses will be brought up to speed eventually. But you stand your post. Be strong, you guys. Let's stay up here out front and let's be leaders instead of followers. Because for most of us, like me and you, when standing our post means in the information war, in this high-tech war that we're having. It's the propaganda war. That's the front lines that we are fighting on. Others are fighting on other front lines all over in all industries. But for a lot of us here on the social media platforms and citizen journalists, this is the front lines for us, this information war. So let's keep spreading the truth and waking up as many people as we can while we still have time and opportunity to do it. And that's getting claustrophobic in here. It's tightening up on us pretty quick. But here's just a few of the videos that we've done over the years. Strange lights in the sky everywhere. And that has pictures in it, several pictures that regular people took of these different frequencies. It's not all just one frequency. There's lots of things going on. For example, back in 2017, we did a series, I did some live streams on the patents for, we called it the weather wars. So this type of warfare is, although it's covert and high tech, it is evidence that we have been in the middle of a high tech battle for a long time, and we just weren't aware it was going on around us. But with the weather wars, they can use, just like a microwave heats water, that's what it does. It heats water. They can create or intensify or even direct and steer these hurricanes. And then we talked about the directed energy weapons that we're seeing, all of these strange, like the Norway spiral and different sort of holographic technologies and voice to skull. And then before the earthquakes, we always point out these earthquake lights, that there's some sort of frequency discharge above the area before these major earthquakes are happening. And then, of course, we've done a ton of videos on the frequency experiments and the animal die-offs, that just birds falling out of the sky. And they will all have how your organs, every organ in your body resonates at a different frequency, that when we see these birds fall out of the sky, they'll all have the similar trauma. Like they'll have they'll be bleeding out of their mouth, and it'll be one organ in them had trauma, but they didn't run into anything, even though that's the mainstream cover story all the time. Like, oh, well, they were scared by fireworks, so they all like ran into a building. And the witnesses are like, well, I was sitting in my car and I watched them fall directly out of the sky, being touched by nothing. But that doesn't matter, because And here's another really interesting video that really nobody watched back in 2017. Like 1,000 people watched this video for whatever reason, on the mystery of spontaneous combustion. Is it really a mystery, you guys? Is it? But this one was about that town in Italy that back in 2004, they began having this spontaneous combustion phenomenon, and it would be like one thing in their house would catch fire. Similar to, like, say if you put something in the microwave, you can put a potato in the microwave and it's not going to catch fire. But if you put a fork in the microwave, it is going to throw sparks. And so it was that type of a phenomenon. And of course, people were like, oh, is it poltergeist? Is it spiritual? So this spontaneous combustion mystery, that is, my thesis. There are no mysteries. There's only a lack of knowledge. And don't get me wrong, God does allow these mysteries to guide us, to compel us, because he knows his children, to make us search these things out. There is this unquenchable thirst to know inside of us. And so he does use that. But the reason why most of this is a mystery to us is because it's hidden. And occult, the word occult means hidden. So it doesn't mean sorcery and witchcraft, it just means hidden. So that's what the occult mystery schools are all about. Like, they know all about this technology. They've been working with the pagan gods, the fallen angels, the Nephilim, all of that. So they have access to this information, but it's occult because it's hidden from us. But we're waking up. God's showing us outright. So it isn't hidden anymore. So these mysteries like spontaneous combustion, that's what this is. Spontaneous combustion was so freaky for so many years. Like, what? And spontaneous human combustion during these beta tests. You can go back to the early 1900s, and there were these reports, and they would come in and they would find these scenes where there was an intense energy burning, but yet limbs would be left like untouched, not burned at all. So it wasn't, these weren't from a fire. And some of these happened when I lived up in Decatur, up north, closer to Chicago, about halfway. There was an incident there in Decatur. The police went, and same thing, very directed, high intensity spontaneous combustion was happening in somebody's house there, but not spontaneous human combustion in that instance in Decatur. It was this type of thing like that town in Italy experienced. But this town was obviously part of the beta test, because their spontaneous combustion happened in multiple residences throughout the entire town, and it lasted for years. I'll put that link below in the description box if you guys are interested in going back and watching that. I mean, it's not chocked full of information or anything. It's just one little tiny tidbit, a story about this one town that was going through this. And it's a fairly famous paranormal mystery. It's been on several of the shows. It's just here in America, we tend to, almost all the coverage of it is paranormal. Things more like this, when the devil enters the town. And in a sense, that's true because, we know that a lot of this technology is demonic, what we are calling these aliens. So it absolutely is demonic. All of this invasion of the body snatchers, demonic possession, and all of it, although it's technological, it is truly demonic. The problem is demons are real. Demons are real and tangible. They are just interdimensional. And once you break down those brain barriers of our programming and realize they aren't aliens from outer space, that these are interdimensional entities and demons are real, then, I mean, we're really all saying the same thing. We're not saying different things. So whether you perceive it as demonic or whether you perceive it as these Nephilim technologies being used in crimes against humanity, it's really all, we're saying the same thing, just in different lingo. But the point is, most of the coverage here in the United States is all paranormal when you talk about things like this spontaneous combustion phenomenon. But overseas, they are, like here, electrotechnical experimentation, they were talking about it. What type of technology is this? How can a fire start in a water pipe? And of course, they recognized that that must be technological because fire and water don't mix, obviously, but it wasn't the fire, it was the microwaves hitting the metal pipes. And I think it's interesting to at least ponder the possibility that entire towns or entire cities could be used in these experimental technologies. And we've talked about that repeatedly. But now, in light of what we're going through now, and people are starting to question, can these microwave technologies have impacts on things like bacteria or viruses or DNA? And I'm in this video that's coming out, this long epic one that I'm working on. I'll talk about that. It may have to go up on BitChute because I want to talk about it. There are tons of peer-reviewed studies and medical articles, thousands of them, but a few of them that cite very specific clinical results from this technology that we aren't allowed to say. You know what I'm talking about. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Oh, the suspense is too much. I hope it is 5.
What's the letter? What's the letter? What's the letter? What's the letter? The letter of the day is...
So the point is, it's at least worth discussing and revisiting mysteries like this town in Italy that experienced this type of technology slash spiritual phenomenon. And that was decades ago. Now we've seen just such a marked advance in this type of technology now with the mystery trumpet sounds in the sky, right? The sky quakes and all of these related phenomena that go along with these types of events. Well, it's frequency technology. And you guys know in more recent history, we've seen several towns that did not fare so well. And we put a lot of those pictures in these California firestorms, and we posted a lot of the pictures. And I'm sure most of you remember, but a lot of pictures like this that they just kept telling us these were just camera flares, and even people who captured them in infrared and different had really expensive cameras. Still, it was all just one big mistake, even though there were so many witnesses. But I think to the casual observer, it's obvious that these same things that they're showing us here today in Newsweek and all the mainstream media, that these beams that we were seeing during all of these major events were awfully similar to what they are showing us openly right now. And if you haven't seen the series I did called Paradise Lost, there's a lot of information in there, and it takes it all the way back to ancient times and ancient technologies, right through these current events that we are seeing, like, say, the California wildfires, and into, even though this was made over a year ago or about a year ago, it's kind of pertinent right now, because when we're talking about these FEMA camps and these relocations and these smart cities and different things that are coming down the pike that all have to deal with this technology, you can see like here in part 3, because every full version video that I do, I break it down in smaller 1-hour episodes, and you can see that part 3 is about China's ghost cities, how they have built these empty cities, these enormous cities. And of course, the mainstream tells us, they do all these reports on it, and they're like, oh yeah, they just have these building programs to keep people working, it's to stimulate their economy and keep people working. And it's like, really? They're building these empty concentration camps like right there in front of our faces, and we're just like, oh well, I don't know why they're building these giant apartment buildings, these barracks, these skyscraper barracks to stack people in cracker boxes, and nobody lives there. They're just sitting vacant for years and years while they build them. It's like, okay. But anyway, back to this major news release from CNN and Reuters and Business Insider and Newsweek, because you know how the mainstream media does. They work from a sort of press release, from a script, all of them releasing propaganda at the same exact time. So today's big press release is about these directed energy weapons. And this laser is more of a destructive force type weapon, but they've been showing us the other invisible frequency weapons the military has, the press releases have, for years, for about a decade at least. Before 2012, it's been about 10 years that I remember they started telling us about them for crowd control and dispersal.
Remember this, back in January of 2015, Ohio State fans hit the streets to celebrate the football team's national championship. Police were forced to use tear gas and pepper spray to get people out of the street. And tonight, officers are already preparing to handle any crowd control situations that might arise after Saturday's game. NBC4's Ted Hart is live on High Street with more on a new tool police have.
And it did quickly get out of control, and with so much now riding on this year's final regular season game, police say they will be prepared. This was January 12, 2015. Police used tear gas and pepper spray to break up the crowds, after first making this announcement.
Emergency, gas may be deployed.
But students and some members of the media complained that they did not hear or did not fully understand what police were saying.
You are ordered to immediately leave this area.
That won't be a problem the next time something like that happens. Using a Homeland Security grant, Columbus police purchased a long-range acoustic device.
The Pentagon has a heat ray. It's invisible, it's silent, it's real, but it's not deadly. It shoots an invisible beam of intense electromagnetic waves at human targets that penetrate the skin about 1/64 of an inch deep. The beam creates what the military calls an intolerable heating sensation that makes people instinctively move away from the beam. The active denial system can be used for crowd control, securing a perimeter, and protecting a convoy. This technology has been around for a while, more than a decade, but it's been keeping a low profile. The Marines have used it in training exercises.
Raytheon has created a handheld, non-lethal pain ray. We've talked about Raytheon before, right? They build exoskeletons, autonomous turrets, really high-end military stuff. I tend to think of them as Stark Industries before Tony Stark sobered up. Over the last decade, Raytheon's been tinkering with an energy weapon called active denial. It's a crowd dispersal system, basically a gigantic ray gun mounted in a truck hundreds of yards away, blasts controlled microwaves into a crowd, making them instantly unbearably hot, and their reflexes kick in and they make them move, and then the pain is gone.
And as most people already know, the exact frequency band that the military has been using for all of these technologies and their communications is the exact same band that has now been opened up for use by this new technology that they are rolling out around the world. And I know when they talk about these directed energy weapons, especially with the active denial system, the crowd disbursement technology, they repeatedly say it's non-lethal, it's non-lethal, it's non-lethal. So people are like, oh, this is great. This is, it's great. It just penetrates 1/16 of an inch and, this is non-lethal. Well, I will show you these clips right here that it absolutely can be lethal. It's just like when you use a microwave to cook something, right? You can turn it way down, you can dial it way down and just use it to defrost and bombard the object at a lower dose for a longer period of time, or you can dial it way up. So anyway, here is the footage of the directed energy weapon from the Navy. And this is, even though I'm discussing it today, you can see the date on this is 2017. This was published, the Navy's weapon, in 2017. So this isn't anything new. We have been trying to tell people that this is coming for a long time. And now look at the situation we're in with worldwide house arrest, worldwide lockdown, and they have these active denial, crowd dispersement, breakup protests, riots, that type of thing. They have this sort of technology ready and waiting. But anyway, let's just take a look. This is the press release. This is mainstream media. This is the Navy's directed energy. It's not exactly what I'd call non-lethal.
Operationally, it works just like a laser pointer. There's a chamber inside with special materials that release photons.
If you're looking at a boat coming in over the water, you can target exactly the engine and take out exactly the engine and not necessarily damage anything else.
Okay, did you catch that? It's the precision targeting. That if something is, 5 or 6 feet apart, you can take out, say, one engine and not the other. Sound familiar? This is what people have been talking about with the forbidden word, the one we can't say, or the technocrat thought and speech police will come after us and censor us.
Oh, this suspense is too much. I hope it is
5. What's the letter? What's the letter? What's the letter? What's the letter? The letter of the day.
Yeah, that technology to triangulate, to target an individual, just an individual and not an entire crowd or an entire area, that to triangulate onto that person, we have to have people a few feet apart, about 6 feet apart, so that they can target one individual without targeting the other. And that's the concern. And we should be allowed to talk about these concerns, because we know that police and military and everybody else have been using our cell phones to, even if it's something wonderful, like trying to find a missing person, or a kidnapped person or something, by their cell phone, by triangulating their cell phone, or trying to catch somebody who committed a terrible crime and they're on the run, by triangulating their cell phones, or whatever, all these other tracking devices that they've sprinkled all over us. So this isn't anything new, but what is new is the rollout of this new frequency dispersal technology all around us, and them programming us to keep a certain distance apart, suddenly thrust upon the whole world. This is the new normal, right? They say, even though we're going to open things up and we're going to, go back to an economy where we're allowed to work and we're allowed to come out of our homes, this isn't going to change. This is the new normal, social distancing. You can't go anywhere. Any store you go into, they've already laid out the infrastructure. They've put stickers on the floor, X's on the floor, footprints on the floor, arrows. It doesn't matter if you're at a store or the post office or whatever. If you're standing in a soup line to get food to survive, they've got people wrapped around the block, 6 feet apart, even outdoors, 6 feet apart, stay on the squares. This is our programming. Just like when a kindergartner goes to school for the first time and you teach them how to stand in a line, how to sit in their assigned position, how to do all of these things. Well, we're all in kindergarten for this new technology. This is the new normal, what they want to be the new normal. That we can learn not to be in groups, but that we will have our device on us and that we will stay about 6 feet apart. And even though a lot of this is temporary, as we move forward into the next wave or the next event, this may come to an end. I believe there's a possibility of that. I believe there's a possibility they could escalate it this winter as well. But even if this comes to an end, the next one's going to be the real deal. The drills will be over at that point, and the next one will be the real deal, and people will know what to do. They will know to stay apart. So even if they don't have these on the floors everywhere, people will know. They will do it instinctually. They already do. It has changed society in a way that is so detrimental. I go out to anywhere that I go, and people look at you with suspicion, like you're going to kill them, because that's the way they've made us look at each other now. Not with affection and love and humanity, but to just look at each other with suspicion and danger. Another human is a danger. You don't want to get close to another human. And, people sneer at you and, why are you, if you walk into the post office and you just need to go into the little drop slot and drop something off, but they're all on their assigned blocks 6 feet apart and you walk by somebody, they'll sneer at you like, oh, what have you done? It's changed society in a really, really terrible way already. But anyway, back to the technology. Once we have the new normal in our mindset, that you won't even really need these on the ground anymore. People will do it naturally because we're being classically conditioned. We're being trained like a puppy dog to do it, and we're doing it. And one last thing that I wanted to bring up before I close this video is I always try to include both the science and technology and the spiritual aspect so that we don't forget what our real battle is. That it isn't against one another. Our battle is not against flesh and blood. This is a spiritual, celestial event that is going on. So I just want to mention a couple of dreams and visions that there are thousands upon thousands of them out there if you take the time to search them. But anyway, I've seen, so I would love to pull the clips and put them in here, but there's just no way. I should have saved them to my files, but I didn't. I try to watch everybody, as many testimonies as humanly possible, not just from these, big preachers or anything, but the people who have 1 subscriber, who have 97 views. Those are the people I want to hear, my brothers and sisters in Christ. I want to hear their testimony. I want to hear what the Lord has shared with them. And I've heard probably thousands pertaining to this, but they didn't know what they were seeing at the time. Not, this technology not being revealed to us. So I'll just throw out 2. One was posted fairly recently, and what she was shown, which she did not understand, but she said it was a situation similar to a quarantine, that nobody was in the streets. It was a sort of ghost town, and there was a young man who had come from the hospital or had gotten an injection, and he was running through the streets, and he was saying in his, like, she could read his thoughts, he was thinking, the Christians were right. They were right. I've got to find the Christians. I've got to get to the Christians. That there were groups, sort of the underground church type deal, groups of Christians who are resisting, and he wanted help, and he wanted to know how to get this out, and he was running through the streets, and this is what happened to him. The footage that I just showed you, only to a person, hit him. But she didn't know that she had seen, a directed energy weapon or anything like that. She just said, she saw him literally blow up out of nowhere. There were no bullets. There were no police around. He was alone, and she saw that. So she didn't understand that. But to me, that sounds exactly like this. It sounds exactly like this. Another one I heard recently in the last week or so was also about, what we would call the mark of the beast, what the secular world would consider an ID, a new form of identification, a new form of digital currency, a new form of medical records, all of that type of thing. But this boy, she was in a line of people and they were deceived, she said, into going into this hospital setting. She was in this type of environment, a sort of processing, waiting room, medical sort of environment. And another boy came in, and I think she said a teenage boy, and he was also being told that he had to do this, he had to accept this was for his own good. And he said, no, I will not. And she said that she couldn't understand what was happening to him, but it was like something hit his brain. And she said he started to sort of groan, and his eyes, he would almost lose consciousness. His eyes would roll back. He was groaning in pain. He put his head down. And she said that she could see, similar to when something is microwaved, like if you microwave something in the oven, a hot dog or something, and you cook it way too long and it starts to turn black in spots. She could see black spots starting to form on the outside of his head. And I'm not going to go any further because it was graphic. But my point is, again, this is what we're talking about, the technologies, the microwave technologies that have been, this infrastructure that has been built around us, that you are extremely naive. You don't need CNN to put it out on their news broadcast that this technology exists. I know people can't listen to us for whatever reason. I've spent years showing the patents, showing the footage that citizens have captured, the infrared footage that people have taken, citizen journalists, people using their own equipment at home. I've tried to post all of that evidence from eyewitnesses to patents to science to articles like this. And for whatever reason, unless you have a mainstream media, CNN or something tacked to your name, the masses usually don't hear. But I'm not going to stop trying. So that's why I include the mainstream articles and stuff, because at the very least, for those people who just can't hear the truth, we've been so demonized, conspiracy theorists, so much that they can't hear. At least if we put clips like this in, it helps them hear. So hopefully this video will reach somebody, even one person. So if you have a relative or a loved one or a friend, or you just want to start a conversation with somebody who may not be able to receive this information, maybe this will help, because we are living in an era where riots, we have the election coming up at the end of this year, at the very same time that they're telling us this second wave of lockdowns is going to hit, and all of this type of thing. So the potential for rioting and protests, and the need for this sort of crowd dispersal technology, and the rollout of the mark of the beast total control system could be just so much closer than anybody could even imagine. I mean, we know we've been preaching this so long, it's hard to even wrap your mind around that it could actually be here. Like this is finally it. But there is a chance that this thing could kick off by the end of this year. I mean, I'm not saying it will. They're saying, a year and a half, 2 years before the major vaccines, the ID 2020 and all of that type of control system is rolled out. But even President Trump says that by the end of this year that he's going to call in the military and that they'll be distributing vaccines. And even if we are not yet to the point of the quantum dot, the nanotechnology implant vaccine identification system, by the end of this year, right here already, the Department of Defense and HHS has awarded a $138 million contract to Abiject Systems to provide pre-filled, syringes with RFID microchip tracking systems. So even right now, if the quote-unquote final solution, as Bill Gates calls it, with his quantum dot tracking system and all of that is not ready yet, the government, the Department of Defense, is already ordering syringes that implant this micro tracking technology. And you know, all of the bills being passed are about trace it, track it, trace it. We got to trace it, track it. And you know, that's a great excuse to track and trace everybody with everybody's consent. That's what people say about the mark of the beast. Well, they can't force it on you, that you will have to take it willingly. Well, I don't see much objection to that from the masses. Now, from the body of Christ, of course there is, but we need to keep waking other people up. So hang in there, brothers and sisters. I know we're all weary. I get it. But you don't stop. If you're running a marathon, you don't run the whole thing and then stop 5 feet before the finish line. No, if you're here right now and you're awake, then let's keep waking people up. The window of opportunity is closing fast. Please share this information. Don't be ashamed. Be brave. Say brave things. I know it's getting dark outside, but we have hope. We are not hopeless. We have a blessed hope. We have a Savior. There is nowhere to run and hide from nanotechnology. There is no way to hide from what is coming upon this world. But we do have a Savior. The only shelter is in Christ. He says, make your refuge in the Most High God. That is your refuge. You've heard all the parables since you were a little tiny kid about Daniel in the lion's den. There was still a lion's den and Daniel was in it. But God shut the mouths of the lions and no harm came near Daniel. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, thrown into the fiery furnace so hot that the people who threw them in were killed because getting that close to the opening. But they walked out not only alive, but without even the smell of smoke on them. We have a Savior, and this whole world's going to need one. So we need to get out there and let them know. Let the hopeless know. There's no need to be hopeless. There is hope, and there is salvation. And it's free. It's a free gift from your Holy Father who loves you. He's trying to rescue you. Come home. Come out of that darkness and that hopelessness and that mainstream narrative and read the banned book, right? This is the book that they banned from public education, from the re-education camps. You cannot read this book in public education. Well, educate yourself. Get yourself a Bible. If you can't afford one, contact me and I will get you one. My email address is always down below in the description box. Just drop me a line and I'll handle it. Because I want you to know, I want you to have this peace in your heart that I have, this peace that surpasses understanding. The total darkness can descend upon the world and I can still have a smile on my face and I can still have hope. And I want you to have that and experience that and be alive again and not be drug into the pits of despair where the official narrative is dragging people. Because we aren't done yet. This isn't the time to slink back and hide. No, this is the time to rise and shine. Rise and shine. Like I always say, God didn't stop creating you in the womb. He's creating you with every single life experience, with every interaction. And the only way you are going to manifest, to grow up, to be children of God, to form yourself into the image of Christ, the only way that you are going to be a hero is to face the opposition that we have right now and to stand up and be brave and courageous and loving anyway. This is for the lost. We are here on a mission, but this is also for you. Everybody wants to be a hero, right? Until it comes time to have to be brave and be a hero. And now's the time. Rise and shine, guys. I love you. God bless you and your families.